This is the Patriots Drive Podcast.
We are all Patriots.
Where we discuss, analyze, and answer questions to all things happening in the NFL and with our New England Patriots. Now, here's your host, Cole Kelly.
Welcome into another edition of the Patriots Drive Podcast. Today we're going to be discussing a full Patriots offseason plan, including free agency, re-signing our current guys, the draft, all that good stuff. So this will be a good one. We'll be talking about each and every free agent the Patriots currently have, what we think if they should re-sign them, long-term, short-term, who they should draft, what trades they should make. So this will be a good one. In-depth offseason plan, starting to pick up, combines starting this week, and football's starting to have some momentum of a couple different things going on, getting towards the draft and watching all these prospects. So this should be a fun one. But I'm here with my co-host, Jace Campbell. How's it going, Jace?
It's going good. Combine news coming out. It started today officially, although on-field stuff won't start till Thursday, but we're getting rumors of, reported meetings from Olave, Burks, Williams, and so it's exciting. You're getting all these rumors coming out, and now it's, finally starting to come together, and you're going to start seeing some of these actual rumors that people are reporting come true. So I'm excited. Hopefully it's a good offseason. Hopefully we get some key guys back and maybe some additions that can help take us to the next level. So
yeah, always an exciting time of year, getting new guys, free agencies coming up quicker than I thought. I mean, it's 2 weeks away before illegal tampering. That's insane. I thought I feel like it's usually way later, it feels like. So it's an exciting time. Draft prospects, new players. We're all going to be disappointed compared to last offseason. I mean, when the Patriots went absolutely berserk, that was crazy. It's going to be a lot quieter this year, probably. Maybe some more low-key type of players, but it doesn't make it any less fun. Still fun to analyze these prospects and pick apart, give our own game plan of what we would do if we were the GM for the Patriots. And not that Bill will listen to us at all, but still fun to do the activity at least.
Oh, he should listen to us. I mean, maybe he watches this video and then they just follow our offseason plan, and then we suck so bad that they go 4-13. So yeah, Boston headline. He's asked me like 3 or 4 times if we're going live this week. So
we missed a week. He missed us. We missed him too, though.
Just got a couple clips out, and so.
But let's start right off with a little bit of combine news before we get into the actual offseason plan. But it's reported that the Patriots requested to interview with a few wide receivers here at the combine: Chris Olave, Jameson Williams, and was it Treylon Burks was the third one?
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on, I guess, those guys that they chose, and if you think that means anything? I know a lot of people are looking into it a little bit, but if you think about it, the first people that they get to interview is the quarterbacks, tight ends, and wide receivers. They have a quarterback, they have tight ends. They're lacking wide receivers a little bit. So it makes sense that that's the first position groups they'd request to interview. But what are your thoughts on the guys they chose and what you think maybe that means?
Yeah, I think people are looking at it maybe a little too much. Like you mentioned, the other 2 positions that are available for interviews right now are not really a need. So they're filling up the time slots. I look at it, though, that they're probably if you look at it, it's interesting that they didn't request Garrett Wilson. I think that they assume he's probably going to be off the board by then. Drake London too. Either they assume he's not going to be on the board, or they're a little bit worried about his fit with the team. But Treylon Burks would probably be my last option on there, even though he has tremendous talent, size, speed. I'd probably go Olave 1, Williams 2, and then Burks 3. But it's exciting. I know a lot of Patriots fans are going to think that this means we're taking one. I don't think we should read too much into it, but it's always exciting. I'm more interested to see who they interview, like the 2nd or 3rd round receivers. I'm sure that they'll get a lot of those into, and they might go under the radar, but I'm interested to see, if they get Christian Watson in and they interview him, if they interview Wan'Dale Robinson, some of these guys that are probably going to be there with our 2nd, 3rd round picks. And maybe that's the receiver that they get in the draft. John Mechie, obviously a name that Patriots fans are all really excited about. Hopefully that he is a Patriot, but I think that those will be more interesting because I don't think that it says much when you're interviewing the top receivers. New England's going to do their due diligence on all the guys that they think is going to be there on 21, and then probably just trade back anyways. So
yeah, exactly. That's probably what it's going to end up being, unless they find another way to acquire picks, which we'll touch on more in a little bit. But I agree with you. I don't think anybody should get their hopes up too much. Boston Headline here says he'd do anything for us to draft Mechie. I would as well. I would love to see Mac and Mechie reunited. That'd be that would be awesome. And Gabe here says I love Burks, but taking Burks with Olave and Williams still on the board would be the most Patriots pick ever. I agree. That's that's what we saw when Nikhil was drafted, obviously. Then AJ Brown went behind him. We all know that story. So that would be a Patriots pick right there. And Burks somehow wouldn't work out. I do think Burks could be good. I just, like we talked about, maybe not here. Fit wise, it scares me a little bit. Little similar to N'Keal Harry. He's more athletic, a little bit faster. But yeah, Olave and Williams, either one of those two are on the board, or all three of them on the board. I would love to take Olave or even Jameson Williams. He's maybe not as good of a fit like we touched on in our video the other day, but he's still uber talented, extreme athlete, speedster, game-breaking speed. He's a guy that can certainly change the game, and if he gains a little size, maybe to add some physicality to his game in the NFL, you need to be have a little bit of meat on your bones to last long in this league usually. So, but he's talented. He would be going top 10 right now, top 12 if he didn't tear his ACL. So I'd be happy still getting a guy that talented. That'd be exciting in round one.
Yeah, I mean, if we change our offense and we use a deep threat, I think Williams is a no-brainer. He's a guy that is so hard his skill set is so hard to find. He just has raw speed. He runs past defenders. We've talked about it in multiple videos, the one we just uploaded. I feel I'm scared to draft Williams coming off of an ACL injury and knowing the offense that we have been running the last couple of years and, not really taking those down the field shots. So I would love to see him for his explosiveness, but like you mentioned, an Olave type of guy he's going to come in and he's going to make an immediate impact. He's going to be very sure-handed receiver. He's going to run good, crisp routes at all three levels. He's going to make himself available for Mac Jones right at the snap because he can run quick slants, quick outs, intermediate deep routes. He's the safest pick for me at 21, in my opinion, if they go the receiver route.
I agree. I think it'd be a slam dunk pick right there. The things he can do really fits our offense well. His route running, his separation, he can win at the intermediate, win at the deep level of the football field. He's a talented guy, and we mentioned in the video that maybe his run after the catch could use some improvement, but the Patriots system doesn't necessarily always work best with some of the guys like that. So it's intriguing, all these different guys, but out of those three, I would love Olave. I just think, like you said, safe pick, instant impact. He's going to immediately step on the football field year one for the Patriots and make some sort of immediate impact. And I don't think you can say that for Williams, especially with his injury. That just knocks him back a little bit. The system's hard to learn. It's going to take time. I think one thing that's different with him and Mechie is Mechie already has the chemistry with Mac. So even if he misses 6 months with an ACL injury, he's got chemistry with Mac, and that kind of adds another layer of he can catch up quicker because they already have that built-in chemistry, whereas Jameson Williams would be starting from scratch with Mac because he has never played with him. So that's one interesting aspect of this to look at as well. I know everybody's worried about the ACLs. You also got to worry about re-tearing an ACL. Once you tear one, maybe you tear the other. It's a tough injury. It's gotten a lot better. The medical aspect of it has gotten a lot better, easier to handle, quicker recovery. It's not career ending as often as it used to be. So people can handle it, but it's also a serious injury that keeps you out for the season and can impact your long-term career.
We got some Braxton Berrios fans in here. Maybe we don't need a receiver. Bring him back and let him be our wide receiver one. So, no, I agree. I mean, it's tough, and Patriots fans are going to be, a little shy from Drake London and Treylon Burks, and I think that it's fair. I personally don't. I think that Jameson Williams is a better fit than Burks or London, and I don't know if either of them really fit the scheme if it's going to be what we saw last year. Although I think that Burks and London are way better athletes and way better talent at the wide receiver position than N'Keal Harry. The only thing they have in common is big-bodied receivers that can make contested catches. And one of them happens to be from the Pac-12. So I think that there's better scheme fits, and Mechie would probably be one of the best scheme fits outside of Olave. He's going to come in, like you mentioned, chemistry with Mac. He's going to be able to run a ton of routes coming off of his ACL injury. He's going to kind of be that middle of the field threat that we've seen in New England for the past 15 years with Edelman, Wes Welker, and even the tight ends will contribute to that. So I think that the smaller slot receivers are more of the wide receiver ones that you have to target, just because we haven't seen New England really had success finding a true X receiver, outside of Randy Moss. You look at some of the guys in the past, Brandon LaFell, Malcolm Mitchell, kind of decent careers here and had a couple bright moments, but they're not going to, make a name for themselves in the living in New England. So that's where I see them going, with this first round of combine news that we're starting to get with the wide receiver interviews. And then we'll see the on-field measurements and testing and stuff on Thursday.
Yeah. And it's the interviews. I know, like we just said, a lot of people might take it, but I really think people shouldn't get their hopes up too much necessarily for the position. They're going to be doing it for every position. And this is just the first step on the ladder. So one thing I do think is that a guy like Olave, with his speed, I think if he tests well at the combine, that might make him unavailable to us at pick 21. So we'll see how these guys' stocks go up and down throughout this combine and over the next week. We should find out a lot of news. This is kind of where a lot of insiders and a lot of GMs, coaches talk, and this is kind of where some news comes out. Next week's podcast, we should have a lot of stuff to talk about. Patriots usually start talking contract negotiations with players. JC Jackson, Jakobi Meyers. We'll see all these guys probably starting to get in contact with the Patriots, and things are going to be starting to pick up over the next couple of weeks. So let's. You got anything else on the combine news, or you want to hop right into the free agents?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, so free agent number 1 for the Patriots. We're using overthecap.com. Jamie Collins. What do you think about another Jamie Collins reunion? How do you think he did this year, and do you think it'd be worth bringing him back?
If he comes back, I think it's going to be a 1-year deal. I'm not necessarily. I don't think that it's a need. He's going to be 34 this year. It's going to be his 10th year in the NFL, and he's played some of his best ball in New England. So I think that with what you saw in New England that last year is that you need a little faster linebackers, and he's definitely got some speed that he can still play the position a little bit better than Hightower, in my opinion. But I still think that with Kyle Van Noy going to be on the roster, hopefully we'll get to this with Jawan Bentley, Cameron McGrone, Raekwon McMillan. If you draft a guy, I think that the linebacker position is pretty set. I think that Jamie Collins, we're going to see him leave. We thought that maybe he could come and contribute, and he made some good plays, but in the long run, he's just not a scheme fit anymore. He's getting up there in age, a little bit out of his prime. It was great while his time lasted. I just don't see New England bringing him back this offseason with the linebacker depth that they have and the young pieces.
Yeah, especially with the money situation. You got bigger impending free agents that we'll touch on. But I agree, Jamie Collins, I mean, he was impressive. He has impressive athletic ability, and he made some plays like that Panthers game. That interception was insane. He made some plays like that, and he had his fair share of solid games. But overall, he's 33. I think there's other options. I think there's good options in the draft, rounds 2, 3, that could replace him. And I just think the money that you're going to spend on him isn't going to be worth it. You got a bunch of other players that you need to re-sign, and I don't think he should be a high priority on the Patriots list here. But moving on to number 2, Ted Karras. What do you think of him?
I love Ted Karras. He's going to be 30 this year in his 7th season. Probably one of the best pickups that we had last year in the offseason. We thought he'd be a backup guard, and came in and played some big time games. Obviously started most of the year over Michael Wynn. So I wouldn't mind coming in back. PFF has him signing around a $4 to $4.5 million contract per year. I wouldn't mind that, maybe sign him for a 2-year deal, bring him back on until he's 31, 32, and continue whether you're moving a Winu inside, or if, some of the Shaq Mason rumors are true, you have someone that's been in the system, even though I don't think they're true. But I would love him. I think that it's always important to have versatility and experience at the backup guard. So I honestly wouldn't mind. The thing that makes it tough is, like you mentioned, is we're going to have a lot more priorities with our cap space, and shoveling out $4.5 to $5 million for a backup guard might be a little bit tough. So I'd love to see him back. I think that it should definitely be something that New England considers more than other guys, but it's going to be tough.
PFF currently has his expected projected contract at $4 million per year on like a 2-year deal. So my opinion on Ted Karras, and this kind of goes with my specific offseason plan, but a trade that I'm going to have us making is going to open up a spot where we need to have a guy like Ted Karras. And I think keeping him is going to be huge for us. He's 29 years old, experience in the system. He was great this year. He was a super solid offensive lineman for $4 million. Has he been a backup? Yes, but I think he's a serviceable starter in this system next to some of the guys that he'll be working with. I think we should keep him. I think if you have the money to keep him, you should. They didn't want to play Onwenu over him this year, so I don't think you can necessarily just assume that they're going to be comfortable sliding Onwenu at that left guard spot. Maybe they are, maybe they're not, but he's been a lot better at right tackle. His rookie year, he was tremendous at tackle, and when he had his reps, he was pretty solid this year too. So I think Ted Karras is a guy that they need to keep, and sticking with that offensive line. Next guy we got is Trent Brown. What do you foresee the Patriots doing with him? What do you think we should do with him?
I think that this is another one. You got to start making some contract extensions or restructuring to keep him, especially with JC Jackson still being out there, and whether you're going to tag him or do something long-term with him. You got to start creating cap space. PFF has him signing a 2-year, $10 million contract per year, so $20 million for the two. I think that it's tough, and you're going to have, a ton of cap space created somehow in some way to bring back both JC Jackson and Trent Brown. But this should be a priority, in my opinion, to bring back Trent Brown, because he has been that good on the right side of the line of scrimmage when we've had him healthy. It's just a matter of fact, as if he can stay healthy inside him. He's going to be 29 this year, kind of on the same timeline as Ted Karras. I wouldn't mind bringing him back on a 2 or 3 year deal. It's just, I think a lot of this that we're running into is the money issue. If you can create the cap space to bring back Trent Brown, you 1,000% do it. I'm 1,000% with it. If not, it makes it a little hairy, and then that right tackle position is a little bit scary, and maybe you have to stick a Wynn there, and now you're stuck keeping Isaiah Wynn at the left tackle unless you want to draft a young tackle or dip into free agency for a cheap one.
Yeah, I think Trent Brown had his ups and downs this year, but I trust Trent Brown when he's on the field a lot more than Isaiah Wynn. And I'm kind of going to touch on Isaiah Wynn and Trent Brown here at the same time, but I have the Patriots trading Isaiah Wynn. That creates $10.5 million in cap space for the Patriots if they trade Isaiah Wynn. You can re-sign Trent Brown for about that same price, $10 million annually. So I think re-sign Ted Karras, re-sign Trent Brown, trade Isaiah Wynn, left tackle Trent Brown, left guard Ted Karras, David Andrews, Shaq Mason, and Mike Onwenu at right tackle. I think that's a good starting 5. And yeah, people might say Trent Brown has his injury problems, which he does. I mean, not many people were more frustrated with Trent Brown this year than I was, as you had to deal with me on the podcast venting about Trent Brown. But Isaiah Wynn has the same injury issues. I mean, he hasn't been healthy his career, and the 1 year where he was healthy this past season, he wasn't that good. So I think Isaiah Wynn getting traded, re-signing Trent Brown, that's basically a 1-for-1 cap wise. I think it makes all the sense in the world. And I think securing a left tackle to protect Max blindside, a big guy like Trent Brown, he's played left tackle before. He has some versatility with that. I think that'd be a great option. But what are your thoughts on Isaiah Wynn? What do you see the Patriots doing with him?
Yeah, I think that if he gets traded, I told you this, I think that it would be an absolute steal if we were to get a 3rd round pick or more. I think that his value is going to be a 4th or a 5th rounder. Sadly, when you take him in the 1st round, he just hasn't panned out like he is. He's on an expiring contract. Teams might not be willing to give up too much of their future for a guy that's really unproven. So I love it because it's saving $10.5 million, 10.4 to be exact. I love the cap aspect. And especially with New England this year, not having a ton of picks. You get 1, 2, 3, and 4. You don't have a 5th, you have a 6th, then you don't have a 7th rounder. This might be a way to get an extra 4th or a 5th round pick. And then if you get like a team like Cincinnati that feels like they're just in this win now mode, and they're willing to give up a 3rd round pick because they think Isaiah Wynn is the answer to their, tackle needs. Maybe they go guard in the 1st round or something. Then maybe you get a 3rd round pick for a team that's kind of in a win now situation. But I think that he's about a 4th, a 5th round draft pick. And honestly, I'd probably take it. I'd take that for him. I'd take a 4th round pick. A 5th round would be hard for me to swallow. I'd take a 4th round pick though, because it's more about getting $10.5 million in cap space. And like you mentioned, use that on re-signing Trent Brown. That's the big part of this deal. So I'm down for trading Isaiah Wynn. I think that, if he goes and he breaks out in another place, good for him. It just didn't work out here for him in New England.
Especially with the depth in this draft, rounds 2 through 3. Even if you can throw another guy in there, like I mentioned, another player for the Patriots, if you throw him in there with Isaiah Wynn, maybe that bumps up to a 3rd round pick, or maybe you throw, there's multiple youngish players that haven't worked out here that have some possible talent that maybe teams want to take a shot on. So I can see the Patriots trying to package Isaiah Wynn, with somebody to try to get a decent pick. Or even we saw some rumors about, or not rumors, but we saw some projections of, Patriots to trade Isaiah Wynn and a 2nd round pick for a guy like Calvin Ridley. And doesn't get much more home run than that. Yeah, Calvin Ridley, one of the top receivers in the league. He's a true number 1 wide receiver. With his off the field issues, you got to take that into consideration. But when he's on the field, he's extremely productive, and he's great. So I would love to have a guy like Calvin Ridley. It's all about the money, and as we both found out, breaking down some of these different contracts, there's a lot of ways you can create cap space for the Patriots this year, but it's still going to be hard to keep a guy that we're going to talk about next and get a wide receiver as well. So that next guy is JC Jackson. He's an unrestricted free agent. He's going to be demanding top 5 cornerback money. He's going to want to get paid. That's what he wants to do here. And the Patriots can franchise tag him for a little over $17 million, but he's going to want a big contract. And I think from past conversations we've had, I think we have a little bit of a difference of opinion on this, but go ahead with your JC Jackson take and what you think the Patriots should do, what do you think they will do, and what you would do if you were in their shoes.
It's not looking good from the reports that he's going to sign a long-term deal. And I think that if JC Jackson's back in a Patriot uniform in 2022, it's going to be as a franchise tag player. And it sounds like he doesn't really want that, which, he's going to be making his average or his estimated salary is probably around $17 million a year anyways. I think that they're having him at like a 4-year, $72 million contract,
which is right at 18. Exactly.
18. So a little, pretty much dang near what he's going to be playing under the franchise tag. But a lot of players don't want to play under the franchise tag because it's not guaranteed money. If they get hurt, you're only on it for a 1-year deal. It's a lot sketchier to play on a franchise tag than to go elsewhere and get a deal. So
Chris Godwin.
Exactly. Played on a franchise tag, and his worked out for him, but rarely, he just tore his ACL. He's gonna lose some money from that. If he would have signed a big deal last year, he would have been getting paid probably $17 to $20 million a year. Now that might drop a little bit with the ACL injury, but keep going. Sorry. Yeah, no. And so I think that the most likely thing right now for New England to retain JC Jackson is with the franchise tag. And honestly, I could see Bill not doing it. I really could. It wouldn't surprise me. I think that they 1,000% should give him the money, keep him there. But when you look at some of the other free agents on the market, maybe Bill says, I want to go get 2 cornerbacks instead of signing 1 for $17 million.
And this is where we have a semi difference of opinion, I believe, is I love JC Jackson. I think he's got a ton of potential. I think he's got a ton of talent. I don't think he's worth top 5 cornerback money right now if he continues at the level he's at. He has shown progression. He has gotten better. I don't know. For me, he's not. He's a number 1 corner, but I don't think he's top of the market number 1 corner. And I think if you're paying him what he wants a payday. He wants money. He's not going to take a pay cut for the Patriots. He wants to get that payday, and I don't blame him. He was an undrafted free agent, so he hasn't got paid a ton of money necessarily in his career. Last year, he made like $3-4 million on the second round tender, whatever it was. I don't think Bill is going to want to pay that kind of money for a guy who can't shut down the number 1 receiver in your own division. He gets burnt by Stephon Diggs every time we play him. He can't guard Stephon Diggs one-on-one. So you're going to pay number one shutdown, lockdown cornerback money for a guy that you'd have to put on the Bills' number 2 receiver and then double the number 1 receiver. I don't know. It's a tough pill to swallow. I don't know if the Patriots have any other choice though. What else are you going to do? You're going to franchise tag him, trade him. Okay. Then what? You go to the draft a couple corners. Hopefully one hits, but there's not a ton of really high end corners in free agency. I don't really know that they have another choice. I personally, I agree with Boston Headline here. Doesn't deserve top 5 money. I understand why he wants it. I understand he's extremely confident in himself and he's a little bit cocky to where he thinks he's better than he is, I think. But that's just what cornerback's mentality is usually. But he thinks he's the best corner in the league based off his interception numbers. And I can't remember if it was Boston Headline or another page posted about his interception numbers compared to Deion Sanders his first few years. And JC Jackson reposted it and was he's not Deion Sanders. You know what I mean? Like he has great interception numbers, but you look at those interceptions, a lot of them come against the Jets every single year. That's just easy interceptions thrown to him. I don't know. When it comes to number 1 receivers locking down, he's pretty good some of the time, and other times there's certain receivers that just get him. And if you're going to pay that kind of money for a corner, he better be able to go against a number 1 receiver every week and shut him down for the most part. And he can't even do that in our own division. You need a guy that can stop Stephon Diggs. Losing J.C. Jackson isn't going to help that case, though, because nobody else, Jalen Mills isn't going to stop Stephon Diggs. Andrew Booth Jr. is probably not going to stop Stephon Diggs his first couple of years. It's a tough situation. I really think the Patriots are in a really shitty spot right now, and we'll see what they do. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Belichick franchise tags him like he did with Joe Thuney and then lets him walk, or franchise tags him, trades him, or just even lets him walk. I honestly wouldn't be surprised. I'd be pissed because you can get good value for JC Jackson if you tag and trade him. So worst case scenario, they let him walk. Best case scenario, he signs an extension for a reasonable amount. I don't know, 16 mil a year, somewhere in that range. I understand your perspective as well. JC Jackson, if you sign him for the next 4 years, 5 years, he's in his prime. He still can get better. When the Patriots traded for Stephon Gilmore or signed Gilmore, he wasn't as good as he was year 2, 3. They kind of turned him into the corner that he was. So it's a tough situation. I love JC. I hope we can retain him, but the amount of money he's asking for, I just personally don't feel like it's worth it. And there's other holes in this team too. I don't know. It's a really tough situation. I don't think either way, I don't think that they can win in this situation.
So the reason I don't agree with the whole top 5 corner thing, where people don't think he's a top 5 corner just because he gets burned by Stephon Diggs. Jalen Ramsey got absolutely torched 2 games in a row, Jamar Chase and Mike Evans. So you're saying that we shouldn't pay Jalen Ramsey top money, and I'm not getting mad at you. I'm just, being the devil's advocate.
It's a fair point.
I'm giving the devil's advocate. 90% of the time, you're going to probably see receivers get the better of cornerbacks. That's the way the game's played. The game is tailored to receivers nowadays. Pass interferences. You can't make contact past 5 yards. The game is tailored to receivers. So when they have success, and personally, I don't know many corners that shut down Stephon Diggs. I mean, he's a tough guy to defend. I mean, I know that it happens. Maybe he has an off day, but when you're playing a dude 2 times a year like Stephon Diggs and JC Jackson plays, they know so much about each other. You can't expect one of them to win more than the other. Like I really think the more you look at the Diggs JC Jackson matchup, it's probably a lot closer than people think, but people are just going to look and say, "Oh my gosh, he gave up, 2 touchdowns against him." And if you ask me, the Bills game in the playoffs, that has nothing to do with JC Jackson. There, you could have taken JC Jackson off the field and we would have still lost 44-0. Like his role on the defense is so crucial in what New England wants to do in locking down half of the field, like we've seen with Darrelle Revis, Stephon Gilmore. I just feel like you mentioned, you can't find a better option than him. And if you want to stay relevant, you got to pay top 5 receiver money. That's what I'm seeing a lot of people. Oh, well, I don't want New England to go trade for Calvin Ridley because he's going to ask for too much money next year. Well, do you want a number 1 receiver or not?
Yeah.
At one point, New England has to start paying these guys money if they want what's called a number 1 corner. And I probably wouldn't take JC Jackson over Jair Alexander, Jalen Ramsey. I'm not saying he's that type of cornerback, but those guys are unrealistic. We're never going to get them. This is the next guy. And if we're just going to keep banking on New England finding undrafted gems in the draft and, developing them into the JC Jacksons of the world, I think that you're walking a very tight rope, and that's a risky strategy to take when building a team.
Which is a fair argument. We could do a lot worse than JC Jackson. You know what I mean? There's a lot more corners that are worse than JC than that are better. It's just tough though. The only problem I have with that is no, we're not going to get Jair Alexander. We're not going to get Jalen Ramsey, but he's asking for that kind of money, and that's the problem. That's where I see the issue is that, yeah, he's not as good as those guys, but he wants to be paid like those guys. He wants to be paid just below that Jalen Ramsey range and that top 5 money. He wants to get what, $18-19 million a year. That's a lot of money. The big problem with me and the Stephon Diggs thing, I know Jalen Ramsey had his issues in the playoffs. It's hard to win Super Bowl if you can't even win your own division. And we know those division games are going to come down every single year for the next however many years. Those division games are going to be so impactful of who wins this division, who has home field advantage in the playoffs, all that different stuff. And if you can't win your own division, it's really hard to win the Super Bowl. Not a lot of teams win it as a wild card team, especially if you got to go. We just had to go face the Bills in Buffalo. And we got absolutely smacked. And no, that was not JC Jackson's fault. That's not what I'm saying. But I don't know. It's tough. And we've been spoiled. We had Stephon Gilmore, Defensive Player of the Year, one of the best years as a cornerback. He shut down everybody. We had Darrelle Revis. But those guys, the Patriots aren't afraid to pay money for a top corner when they feel it's deserved and when it's at the right time. And they might think this is the right time. They might say, hey, JC, you know what? We think you still have untapped potential. We think you're going to keep getting better and you're worth this money. And in 4 years, when your contract's up, it's not going to seem like as big of a contract as it is right now. So maybe that'll be the case. It's tough. It's a lot of money for a guy who is super talented, but he's, in my opinion, it would be overpaying for him if he got the money that he's asking for. And I know some team is going to give it to him. I know some team's going to overpay for him in free agency because he's the best corner on the market. That's a lot of money. And I don't necessarily know if Bill Belichick is going to be willing to cough that up, especially with the other moves he would have to make to pay JC Jackson that type of money.
The other thing too is with the salary cap and everyone keep asking for more and more and more money. JC Jackson's 26 years old right now. Stephon Gilmore won his Defensive Player of the Year at 29 years old. You could sign JC Jackson to a 4-year contract, and he could be playing his best ball in the second, third, and fourth year of that. Like, I know that this is a big if, but he's 26 years old. This dude is so young. You don't see a lot of corners. He's only been in the league 4 years, and he's been a true number one corner for one. I mean, he played behind Gilmore all those years. And played behind, other people. He hasn't been a true number one corner. So my thing is if you're going to let this guy walk, you just might be giving up a top 5 corner in 3 or 4 years when he was in-house and you found him as an undrafted guy. That's my worry. You found this guy as an undrafted dude and he's still young in the league and cornerback, ages and years in the league. I just think that the experience he's going to continue to gain, and I know you say cocky, and I think he does have a little bit of cockiness to him, but that's how cornerbacks need to play. Jalen Ramsey, cocky as hell. I mean, these guys are super cocky, and they need to have that way, especially when you're being put out there one-on-one against some of the best athletes in the world. You got to have that, mindset that I'm better. I'm going to lock this guy down no matter what. So I think that he has the right mindset. He has, all the intangibles. We've seen him be a ball hawk. I think his consistency, and he can still get better. So I don't disagree with maybe the $18 million per year is a little bit too much as of right now. But I really do think you could look back in 3 or 4 years at the end of his contract and say, maybe it wasn't overpay. Maybe it was almost an underpay, because you'll just start seeing now in 2 or 3 years, you're going to keep seeing these next waves like Pat Surtain. If he keeps progressing, they could sign $20 million contracts, $22 million contracts. So that's my worry with letting a cornerback of his caliber walk.
Yeah, and even Stephon Gilmore was a extremely cocky, confident corner, and that's why he was so good. He was just quiet about it. Like, he didn't talk a lot, but when he did talk, the words were usually cocky, confident, whatever you want to call it. He was confident in his abilities to go shut down whoever it was. Anytime somebody was talking trash to him, he just let his game speak for itself for the most part. And then once in a while, you'd get a gem from him and he'd say something. But it's tough. That's why I feel like it's a lose-lose situation. Like, you retain this guy, great. You're paying him too much money right now in the hopes that he turns into something more than he is right now. And can he do that? Yeah, there's no reason he can't, but is it guaranteed? No. And I guess you could say nothing's guaranteed. We just signed Jonnu to a big deal, and he's been horrible for us. So there's worse ways to spend money than a guy that you drafted, you brought up, and who enjoys playing here. He wants to be back with the Patriots. He said that, but I think he wants the money a little bit more. And if the money is available in a much bigger way elsewhere, it's going to be his first big payday, and I think he's going to want to take it. So I think the Patriots are going to have to pay more than they want for him. I can see them letting him just walk. I mean, we've seen situations before in the past where the Patriots don't tag them, let them quote unquote walk to go see what they get for offers, and then come back to the Patriots and they say, hey, this is what we got. JC would say, hey, I'm getting offered $20 million a year. Can you match that? Nope. Okay, I'm going to sign with this team. And maybe that's how it goes. Worst case scenario, tag and trade is what I'm hoping. That's you got to get something back for this guy. The talent that he is, a top 10 corner. I'd say he's a top 10 corner. Like, I don't think he's top 5. He's top 10. And for a guy of that caliber, you got to get something. You got to get something back at least. So it's tough. It's a really tough situation. I love JC. I hope he stays. I hope he stays long term. I wish he would sign a cheap deal for 5 years, $10 million annually. That'd be great, but it's just not realistic for a guy his caliber.
Yeah, it's really not. So it's a lose-lose, like you mentioned, or a win-win, depending on what you do. But let's move on. Dont'a Hightower, the next free agent we have. He's going to be 33 years old in his 8th year, all with New England. What are your thoughts on Dont'a Hightower's free agency?
Before Hightower, do you want to touch on this real quick? And then Jonnu was severely underused, fast tight end in the league. Honestly, a beefy Deebo Samuel, use him in more screens or in the backfield. When we did use Jonnu, he was great. When we got him screens, when we fed him touches, he was great, but he wasn't a great fit this past season in the offense he wasn't a great route runner. He didn't do a lot of the things that Hunter Henry did well, and the reasons that Henry had success. He needs manufactured touches, and Josh didn't really get him a ton of those. When he had some manufactured touches in the Saints game, he had a horrible game. He did tipped pick, drop balls, all that stuff. But for the most part, when he got the ball in his hands, he was good. It just wasn't enough, and he didn't do enough things to deserve the ball in his hands. And it was Mac's rookie year. He probably didn't want to throw into tight windows as much. If he has an open guy and then he has Jonnu, who's tightly covered, he'll probably throw to the open guy. You know what I mean? So what's your thoughts on Jonnu?
The biggest thing is you got to have an offensive coordinator that's creative, because like you mentioned, I was pretty unimpressed with his separation skills and honestly, kind of route running skills down the field. I think that he's super fast, but a lot of people in the NFL are fast, especially safeties, corners. There's some linebackers that are fast. Micah Parsons, he's a fast linebacker. You got cover guys that can run with these tight ends. So I think that you got to be very, very creative with him. And I hope whoever's calling the plays recognizes that. And, even if it's 5 or 6 touches a game and it's fly sweeps or handoffs or screen passes, I think that, you're taking your chances on him breaking one of those because of his raw athletic ability. So I agree. I think he was underused. It's just, I don't think that you're ever going to see him really, just beat a guy one-on-one very often like you see Hunter Henry. He's one of the better route running tight ends in the league and can use his body. Jonnu Smith is kind of a body catcher. You'll see him, get it in his chest a little. So I think that you can definitely find more touches for Jonnu Smith this year with more creativity.
And Belichick said it himself. I think it was before the Titans game in the playoffs with Brady. He said, I don't see it. I don't know if there's a better tight end after the catch in the NFL than Jonnu Smith. And that's high praise. He clearly loved Jonnu and the things that he can do. He's a hardworking guy. I hope he works out better this year. I hope we can manufacture more touches for him, because when he does get the ball, he can do some good things. It's just like we've talked about with the wide receivers, raw athleticism isn't the biggest thing for the Patriots. You got to be able to run the routes correctly and be a functional part of the system, because the system can get you open. So moving on to Dont'a Hightower. My thoughts on Hightower is he wasn't great this year. He really wasn't. He's getting older. I don't know what he's going to want for money. I love Hightower as a leader, as a veteran presence in this locker room, but we got to get younger. We got to get faster, even if it's not necessarily, even if they get another big linebacker somewhere in the second round, we got to get younger. And I don't see the extra money being worth throwing at this guy, even if he's been here forever. He didn't play great. He missed some big tackles. He did some poor things. He was bad in coverage. He did good early in the year stopping the run. Then he had struggles, and then he was just bad the rest of the year. So Hightower for me is a no for the re-sign. I think there's other linebackers in free agency. There's a couple that I think we'll touch on. I think we both like this guy. And then there's plenty in the draft. In that second round, there's a million linebackers that seem like they'd be good Patriots. And also Cam McGrone, we drafted last year in the 5th round. That's another option for linebacker depth, and maybe he can turn into something after his injury. But Hightower is a no-go for me.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of the same thing. If we're going to re-sign a linebacker, we'll get to this. He's coming up. Juwan Bentley is my guy. He's younger, 26. He's shown flashes of being able to, improve his speed, and he's not the fastest linebacker, but I think you have a very similar player in Juwan Bentley than what you have in Dante Hightower. And then if Raekwon McMillan continues to progress off an ACL injury, you can draft a guy that can replace Hightower. It sucks. I agree. He's top 25 all time as a Patriot. He's made some massive plays. I got a picture hanging right here of the strip sack he had against Matt Ryan in the Super Bowl, like just massive plays. And it always sucks to see him go, but I think that it's his time. I agree with you.
Yeah, it's just top 25 Patriot of all time. Mentor, let him retire. I love Hightower. Like you said, so many members of the Patriots, so many big plays. He was that dude for so long for us. And he really was. And it's going to stink to see him go, but it's at the end of the day, it's a business, and you got to do what's best for your football team, and letting Hightower go, letting him either retire or go elsewhere, I think it's going to be in the best interest of the Patriots. And another comment here, assuming Bentley comes back, he'll take 54. We get Mechie and he'll take 8. Yeah. Mechie take number 8. Juwan Bentley. Do you want to touch on Juwan Bentley right now while we're talking about him? You kind of just mentioned it, but do you want him back? Do you think there's other options, like you said, some of the guys that you talked about? You think those guys, Raekwon McMillan and Cam McGrone, could fill his role, or what do you think on his situation?
So PFF right now has him signing a 2-year, $5 million per year contract, $10 million total. I wouldn't mind bringing him back for that. I think that if you take away Juwan Bentley, now you're relying on a Kyle Van Noy guy that is probably out of his prime to be running this defense from a leadership standpoint. The front 7, at least. You're very young on that front 7. So I wouldn't mind bringing back Juwan Bentley, kind of, have Van Noy and him hold the reins of the defense, hold it down. I think that he showed flashes this year. He's not the fastest guy, but I think that losing the weight that he did was able to help him, shoot the gaps a little bit more effectively. He's still a big thumping linebacker that Bill always likes to have. So I think that you sign him maybe to a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal and say, hey, whoever we draft, if we draft a linebacker or if we go sign someone, we're assuming they're going to pass you up in skill. But I think he's still young. He's going to be 26 this year. Maybe he hasn't played some of his best football too. I would love having Juwan Bentley back.
I like Juwan Bentley a lot. My only concern is that a team like Miami, the Lions, somebody's going to overpay. Like Miami took Landon Roberts. It seems like something that they usually do in that the Patriot-like copycat systems. They like to take our linebackers and maybe somebody overpays for him. But at 2 years, $5 million per year, I wouldn't mind Bentley back. I thought he was good this year. I really did. I thought he showed a lot of improvements in the run game and his pass rushing ability. His coverage is a little bit improved. He's still not the best coverage linebacker speed wise, but I like Bentley a lot, and I would not mind keeping him at all. Drafting a guy and having Juwan Bentley next to Cam McGrone and somebody we draft. I think that's a fine answer for me. It's just about if you have the money and you feel like you can account the resources for $5 million for Juwan Bentley, or if you want to use that money towards another position. And I'll touch on Boston Headlines comment. When can coaches speak to linebackers? I'm curious who the Patriots will talk to. So interviews Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the defensive linemen and linebackers will be available for interviews. So I don't know which day specifically. It sounds like all 3 they can. I don't know a ton about that. That's just what's on the schedule though.
They'll probably be Wednesday because they're on field Friday. So they'll be Wednesday interviews.
Yeah. On this general player schedule or whatever, it says interviews Wednesday, interviews Thursday, interviews
Yep.
Friday. I don't know if that's different types or if that's just how they go. But yeah, the on-field measurements and stuff is it Saturday for the measurements,
The
bench press on-field workout Saturday for the defensive linemen and linebackers? Linemen and running backs Friday.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because
okay.
so we get wideouts, tight ends, quarterbacks on Thursday. Friday is the is that O-line, D-line? No,
O-line,
it's
running backs.
O-line, running backs, and then linebackers, D-line, and then we're going to get the specialists and one other one, safeties maybe, defensive backs, corners, defensive backs. Yep. On exactly. Sunday. So,
and then so guy here says hoping that the Pats draft somebody like Jakobi Dean or Devin Lloyd and trade up in the second for a wide receiver or Kaiir Elam. So if anything, I see the Patriots trading back. I don't necessarily see the Patriots using their first round pick and then trading up in the second. They're going to have no picks later in the draft. They already probably want more picks than they have. But like we talked about, a guy like Jakobi Dean, he's a safety in this system. He's like 6 feet tall. He's smaller than Kyle Duggar, weight wise as well. I don't think he's going to be a fit for the system. He's super talented. He could work out somewhere, but Devin Lloyd is more of a fit for the Patriots system just with his size and athleticism, his ability, sideline to sideline speed. He's a guy that I could see the Patriots being interested in. His physicality is maybe a question mark. We'll see how that translates to the system. But if you keep a guy like Juwan Bentley as a physical linebacker, maybe a Devin Lloyd is a good complementary piece to him, and then you have Cam McGrone and those guys as some depth pieces behind them. So I wouldn't mind a Devin Lloyd. We touched on that in the video more, but yeah, there's some good options in the second round as well for linebackers.
A lot of good options. I really do like a lot of the second, maybe third round options more than Devin Lloyd and Jakobi
value wise.
Yes, value wise. I don't think they're better, but I think that the value you could get out of them is very, very good. So let's continue down this list. So we just did Juwan Bentley. Let's move to some offensive positions. We have Jakobi Meyers here. He's one of our only restricted free agents along with Jakob Johnson, but Jakobi Meyers seems like there's mutual interest. What are your thoughts on bringing him back?
I love Jakobi. I think they should bring him back. I think he might even take a team-friendly deal. He clearly wants to be back. I mean, you could see at the end of the year, this past season, his exit interview, whatever it was for the media, he was talking like he's going to be back. That's just his expectation, and I hope he is. PFF has his contract projected at 3 years, $9 million, I think, to re-sign with the Patriots. So average annual of $3 million per year. That's not bad for a guy like Jakobi Meyers. I think that's not bad at all. I think the only thing for some people will say, okay, well, maybe instead of re-signing Jakobi for 3, you try to go get a guy like Odell or maybe another free agent wide receiver who use that extra money for somebody else. Jakobi Meyers has been Mr. Reliable. He's always open on third down, reliable hands. Is he the best receiver ever? No. Does he have a super high ceiling? No, maybe not. But he can consistently get open and do the things that the Patriots want him to do. So I love Jakobi Meyers. I think he's not only a good player, but he's a great person to have in this locker room. I think everybody loves him. He's such a likable guy. And I think him and this wide receiver core mesh really well together off the field. And if they can add a piece to that locker room, I think the sky will be the limit for this offense. But I think Jakobi's a key part of this offense, and they should continue to keep him a part of this wide receiver room.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. You look at some of the guys in their projected contracts: Braxton Berrios, Emmanuel Sanders. I think he's going to be right around $5-6 million a year, and I think that, like you mentioned, maybe he does take a team-friendly deal, and he is a restricted free agent. So some other team could sign an offer sheet, and then New England could say, okay, yeah, we'll match that. We'll take you, or we'll let you sign elsewhere. So I'm excited to see, hopefully, Jakobi back. I think that he's, like you mentioned, Mr. Reliable. Like, he was Mac's favorite target last year. Maybe it's evolving into Kendrick Bourne, but early in the year, I mean, it was always Jakobi Meyers in big situations. So I think that he comes back, and it's something that New England fans, kind of enjoy. And if we don't go get that number one wide receiver, whether it's in free agency or in the draft, you almost have to bring back Jakobi Meyers. So I think that right now you're banking on I think they bring him back because you can't guarantee that you're going to get that wide receiver that you want in the draft unless they just know he's going to be there at 21 or later in the draft. And still, I think that anyone you draft later in the draft is going to take a little bit longer to develop into the Jakobi Meyers role than Jakobi Meyers. So bringing him back, he's, one of the most veteran players on the team as of right now, especially on that offense, even though he hasn't really been a starter for too long, but he's been in the system for longer than Aguilar, Bourne, any of the two tight ends. So he's one of the veteran guys.
Yeah, I think you got to keep Jakobi, especially if they don't add to that wide receiver position. And the draft isn't guaranteed. You don't know who's going to be available at 21. Maybe they love Chris Olave. Maybe he's not there. Maybe he's gone at 18. You know what I mean? So that's not guaranteed. You gotta lock up Jakobi, get him on a deal here, maybe team friendly. I know we're bouncing around a little bit, but Bentley definitely grew as a linebacker last season. Could see him taking over Hightower's role if they were to retain him. I agree. I think that'd be a good fit. And then you slide Bentley over, and then you either draft a linebacker in the second, or one of the guys we talked about fills that role. Let's touch on this real quick. Maybe not super quick, but what's your opinion on Calvin Ridley? Should we take a chance and bring him to New England? Keep in mind cap situation, all those factors. JC Jackson, what's your opinion on the Calvin Ridley situation, and what do you think the Patriots should do?
It depends what his asking price is. I know that there's been some things going around that Winovich in a second. I don't know if I believe that. That would be fleecing the Falcons. And because if he figures out his mental health stuff, he's a top 5 receiver, maybe top 3 receiver. I mean, his 2020 year was phenomenal. He's a premier deep threat in the league. He runs very precise routes, has sure hands. The thing that scares me about him, and it doesn't scare me as much as him coming off of, say, an ACL injury. He's coming off of mental health, which is definitely very hard thing. I'm not downplaying any mental health things.
Yeah.
I'm saying that if he figures out the mental health, he has no physical problems. Guys coming off an ACL, you always wonder, how's he going to perform off the ACL? How's his cuts going to be? If he figures out his ACL, if he can get counseling, if he can, get that under control, he has no other red flags. And I don't know why New England wouldn't want to get him if the price is right. And, assuming the cap is where it needs to be, extend him. Because what's the point of giving up a second round pick, possibly a first? I don't know if that would be the answer for a guy that you're going to have as a 1-year rental. If they trade for him, I fully expect them to, re-sign him and keep him with Mac, because he is, what's his exact age? He's young. He's
26, maybe.
Yeah, he's young. He came out in 17 in the draft. So, I mean, he's not on the same timeline as Mac, but if you sign him for a 4 or 5 year deal, he's going to be there pretty much throughout Mac's whole rookie contract, and he's going to be here all the way until he's 30. So, I think that New England should So I think New England should definitely explore the possibility of him and see what his asking price is. And I wouldn't be surprised if they already have. But New England's going to, especially with the amount of draft picks that we have this year, they're going to be very cautious of what they trade for Calvin Ridley, especially if he is still a question mark with his mental health.
And we've also seen Isaiah Wynn in a second tossed around for Calvin Ridley. That's a cap-wise, that's basically a 1-for-1 as well. Ridley is on the books for a little over $11 million. Isaiah Wynn is 10.5 about. So that's pretty close to a 1-for-1 cap-wise. So that's a good situation. But it's also, if you're getting Calvin Ridley, there's a good chance you're losing JC Jackson. That's just how it is. Money-wise, it's not going to work. The money JC wants, unless they can really finagle some way out of this, it's going to be tough. But I love Calvin Ridley. I mean, the Patriots loved him as well. They funny enough, took Isaiah Wynn over Calvin Ridley in that draft, I believe. But they really were reportedly huge fans of Calvin Ridley. I think he'd be great in this system. Like you said, he's such a tremendous receiver when his mental health is doing well, and when he's on the field, he's so good. He really is. He's a tremendous player in this league. And if they trade for him, that's the only concern for me, is if you trade for him, it's shouldn't be a 1-year rental. You're going to have to extend him. He is going to want money. And an argument from people is, okay, you give up a second in Isaiah Wynn. Maybe instead of that, you take John Mechie, or you take a receiver in the first round and you start them out on that clock of cheap deal for 4 to 5 years. But nothing's guaranteed in the draft. You know what Calvin Ridley is, and that's why I would absolutely love to have him. He's a proven commodity. You know what he's going to bring to the table each and every day on the field. And I mean, imagine that wide receiver room. Maybe you got to get rid of Nelson Aguilar if you bring in a guy like Calvin Ridley. But Calvin Ridley, Jakobi Meyers, Kendrick Bourne. Maybe they draft a receiver later in the draft, and then having Jonnu and Hunter Henry with Mac in that run game. That's exciting to think about right there. So I would love to have Calvin Ridley in New England. If all his off the field issues get solved and he gets the necessary things that he needs to improve his mental health and get that situation figured out. Obviously, that should be his number one priority. That comes before football, but I would love Calvin Ridley. The thought of him being here is super exciting and intriguing to think about.
Yeah, I think that it would intrigue every Patriots fan. Heart's not in it. Yes, very difficult. So I don't think anyone's downplaying the mental health aspect of it. It's just a lot less scary if he figures out his mental health thing than coming back off of, say, an ACL injury or an Achilles injury. He still has all the talent in the world. He's just got to figure out where his heart is and, if he's mentally good enough to play. So I agree with this one too, that Patriots says if JC doesn't resign, it would be nice to at least tag and trade him. I think that this would definitely entice Atlanta. Maybe you just straight up trade them for each other. Atlanta still can improve whatever they want at the 8th pick like they have. Now they have AJ Terrell and JC Jackson opposite of each other. I think, and honestly, JC Jackson would be making a little bit more than Calvin Ridley would be. Obviously
$6 million more.
$6 million more if he wants the $17-18 million. So they'd probably have the cap space. I'm not sure their exact number, but I think this would definitely entice them. And that this is a way that New England can keep their draft picks and still improve at other positions in the draft.
Yeah, I think that's a fair option, and that realistically maybe is something that could be enticing for both sides. JC Jackson, if he doesn't re-sign, that's straight up for Calvin Ridley. Atlanta's not in the best cap situation. I think they're $7 million over the cap right now, but the cap is crap. That's what a lot of people like to say nowadays, except for the Patriots. They don't seem to mess with the cap like some of the other teams do. And the Saints can create $70 million in cap like that out of nowhere. And they're absolutely fine to sign guys. But anyways, I would love this Patriots force. I think that's a good point there. If he does not, some other options here, Wynn, 2nd round pick, and Harry for Ridley in a 5th. Yep. I'd take that. And N'Keal Harry, trading him would clear.
I almost think that would be too much for Ridley. I think that there's rumors. So he's wanting to trade Isaiah Wynn, a 2nd round pick, and N'Keal Harry for Ridley in a 5th. Obviously, getting a 5th round pick makes it a little bit more, but I think straight up you could trade Ridley for a 2nd and another player. And then you can still get a 3rd out of Wynn and maybe package Harry with someone else or get a 7th. I don't know. I feel like this would be a little bit too much for N'Keal Harry, although I like the premise of it. I get exactly what you're saying. If I were to see this deal, and maybe this is just my knee-jerk reaction, if I see this deal come through on draft night or something, I'd probably, maybe wonder. I'd be happy we get Ridley, but I'd maybe wonder if we could have gotten more for those 3 assets.
I don't mind this just because if you think about it, if all his off the field issues are solved, would you give up a 1st round pick for Calvin Ridley's talent?
Yes.
So realistically, you're saying a 2nd round pick. You said Isaiah Wynn's worth a 4th. So a 2nd and a 4th for a 1st round talent at wide receiver. And then adding N'Keal Harry back for a 5th. We might not get a 5th round pick for N'Keal Harry straight up. So I think that I don't mind the value in that. I really don't. I do understand what you're saying. If you can get Calvin Ridley for like a 2nd and Chase Winovich and N'Keal Harry or whatever, that'd be great. Some people think that a 2nd might be enough to get Calvin Ridley. I think you're gonna have to up the price a little bit, maybe. Yeah. And that could be a situation. Maybe we get a 4th round pick back in this situation instead of a 5th. Maybe that makes it better for the Patriots to want to do this trade. But if this comes across on draft night or whenever beforehand, there's no there for me personally, I'm not too worried about it. The Patriots need to get a number 1 receiver. I mean, they just spent a 1st round pick on N'Keal Harry. How'd that work out? So if you're going to invest a 2nd round pick and send some of these guys away that haven't worked out, I'm fine with it. You're getting a guaranteed guy that you know what he's going to bring to the table. And if you can sign him to an extension, have a number one receiver for years to come, I'd be perfectly fine with that. Sony Michel goes to Atlanta, and he and Wynn reunite to play as their college team. Yeah. Sony Michel. Oh, Sony Michel is a free agent this year. That's right.
Yep.
Him
and Wynn.
They were going to take Ridley, but he was off the board before Wynn. Okay. I thought that the Patriots were gonna. I thought they took either Wynn or Sony Michel ahead of Ridley.
I think they took Wynn ahead of Ridley.
Okay, that's what I thought. They were going to take Ridley, but he was off the board. I thought, yeah, I thought I was right. I thought they took Isaiah Wynn, then Ridley went, then they took Sony Michel, right?
So they took. Let's see. Make sure I have the right draft class pulled up. Let me pull it up right here. What, he would have been 18?
Yeah, 2018 draft. We apparently Gabe says we got to censor Isaiah. We can't say his last name.
So we took Wynn at 23. Ridley went 26, and then we took Sony 31.
Okay, yeah. So I was right. All right. Calvin Ridley and Olave would give Max serious weapons. Oh my God, can you imagine? There's no way Belichick would ever do that. Give us two really solid receivers. That will never happen.
That's the thing I worry about is if you go get two wide receivers like this, Calvin Ridley's going to cost you, say, a second at minimum, and you go get Olave in the first. Now, I mean, where's the cap room for JC Jackson? How do you fill that? I think that if you get two true, receiving threats, I think that makes it a little hairy at some of these other positions that you need.
Yeah, no, I agree. Master Echo says here, I personally believe in N'Keal. I hope he shines elsewhere. I do too. I'm rooting for him. I like N'Keal. He just hasn't worked out here, and that's clear. And both parties could use a fresh start, the Patriots and N'Keal Harry. And I'm rooting for him wherever he goes. Oh man, I thought Ridley went before Wynn. Wow, I'm upset now. Yeah, that's unfortunate. We missed another stud receiver taking a first round bust.
I'll try not to ruin your night a little bit more, Master Echo, but I saw your comment up here about Henry To'oTo'o out of Alabama. He actually just declared he didn't declare he's staying his senior year at Alabama, so he'll have to be next year's draft class too.
Oh God,
you want him, and he might be a first round backer. I had my eye on him, but once he said he was staying at Alabama for his senior year, it kind of threw a wrench in those plans. So yeah, we're ruining Echo's night. Sorry, man.
Boston Headline says if we got Lloyd and Mechie W draft right there, I would like that. A linebacker, add speed and versatility to the defense, and Mechie chemistry with Mac, adding a receiver. That'd be great. I'd be super happy with that. There's a lot of wide receivers that I'd be happy with in this draft. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of fits for the Patriots. One question up here that I wanted to get to. I don't know how much you've watched this guy, but what do you think about Wan'Dale Robinson in the second or third round? Could he fit in our scheme?
Yeah, I think that he definitely fits when we're talking about receivers. We're talking about that fit in the scheme. We're talking Chris Olave, and good route runners. I think that that's what you're getting with Robinson. Sorry, I was going to say Sky Moore. That's the problem. Is I feel like there's 4 or 5 better slot receivers than Wan'Dale Robinson. For me, obviously Chris Olave. I'd take Sky Moore over him. I'd probably take Jahan Dotson. Well, I would take Jahan Dotson over him. David Bell out of Purdue, I take over him, and John Mechie, I take over him. So there's probably 4, if not 5, slot receivers that I would take over Wan'Dale Robinson. Now, if you're telling me we're going to get Wan'Dale Robinson in the 4th, or maybe somehow we acquire a 5th pick and get him, I'm all for it. But I don't think that he is in my top 5 for slot receivers just off of the other guys I've seen. I think that he has something to him. He obviously is explosive. He's a good route runner. I like some of the other options better.
Yeah, I like a guy like Sky Moore, scheme fit wise, better. I think just as a slot guy, I think he provides more of the prototypical Patriot type slot. And a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, he certainly has an exciting amount of acceleration, and we'll see what his speed ends up being in the 40. When I watched him on tape, I was wowed by, oh wow, this guy is really fast. But also you see him getting caught up to by backers sometimes when he's like in the open field, and that was kind of weird because just a guy who has that much speed and acceleration, you don't really expect that. But Wan'Dale, I wouldn't mind him in like the 4th round, like you said, if he fell there. He's projected, I think, 3rd round right now. I believe early 3rd, late 2nd maybe. But I personally would rather have a guy like Sky Moore around that range. Just fit wise, I feel like he's more of what the Patriots usually look for.
For sure. Well, let's keep moving on here. Oh yeah, let's answer this one. Slot receivers interest you? I think it's kind of the ones where you mentioned.
We just
Yeah,
Slade
Olaf.
Bolden too is another one, which he's not on the PFF mock draft thing for some reason. But Slade Bolden, just his chemistry with Mac, another slot type receiver late in the draft. You can get him probably in the 6th round, maybe even the 7th. A guy like that interests me as well. And then what we just talked about with Sky Moore. But you got any other ones you want to
The
mention?
other guy would be Calvin Austin out of Memphis. He performed pretty well at the Senior Bowl. He's pretty fast. I expect him to run 4.3s, maybe a 4.2, but he's a blazer. I don't know how good of a route runner he is, but he's definitely got speed. So he would be, and he's 5'9". He's short. He's going to have to play in the slot. So I think that Calvin Austin would be a name later in the chat that you'd keep your eye on for a slot guy too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Let's see. Let's try to cruise through these a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe pick some of the bigger ones.
Yeah, we're kind of on some of the biggest one left, in my opinion, would be James White, right?
Yeah. James White, I think, resign. We severely missed his role last year when he wasn't on the field, when he got injured early in the season. I want him back for another year with Mac. He's security blanket, good receiving back. I think he adds a dimension to this offense that it needed. Brandon Bolden did a pretty good job filling his role. I will say that, but I think you need to keep a guy like James White, another locker room presence, especially if you're losing a guy like Bentley. We don't know what the deal with Slater is. Did we? Okay, no, we haven't. Yeah, but yeah, James White, I think is a guy we certainly need to keep. That'd be
and I think he's going to be pretty cheap. Didn't play much this year. Only played 2 games, maybe 3.
Projected contract is $2.5 million per year.
Yeah, I mean, sign him for a 1-year deal, $2.5 million. Let Harris and Stevenson take the bulk of it. Harris might be gone next year too if he's demanding for a ton of money. And New England doesn't want to.
He wants to be with Mac forever. You know it. He wants to be with Mac forever.
I hope so. I'm just throwing out all the possibilities there. So, let them, that 3-headed monster, Harris and Stevenson, spell each other, and then James White is probably. I don't think I'd want another 3rd down back in the league, other than James White in New England's system. I mean, yeah, McCaffrey would be kind of nice if he could stay healthy for 17 games, but he can't. So James White, I think that he's a staple to bring back for how cheap he's going to be.
I agree. And we'll continue on a little speed round here. Jakob Johnson.
Keep.
Okay, yeah. I agree. Keep Jakob Johnson. Brian Hoyer, what do you think of him? Keep him for Mac's development?
Yes.
I
think the bigger part of this is you keep him for knowledge of the scheme with no clear cut coordinator, offensive coordinator, and really
coach, coordinator, everything. Yeah.
Quarterback coach. You almost keep him there to be like, he already is a mentor, but almost a coach. Like you're almost paying him to coach, although he's still there to be on practice or to help with practice, game plan. I think that you can find tremendous value out of Brian Hoyer, staying as a mentor for Mac Jones for however much he's asking for. It's not going to be a lot, but
I think it's $1.5 million, something like that was what he was on last year. I agree with you. With the situation with the offensive coordinator, we don't know that. Just the offensive coaching staff right now, I would much rather, as scary as this sounds, I'd much rather Brian Hoyer is teaching Mac Jones than Joe Judge and Matt Patricia. I don't know. That just scares me. The offensive coaching staff is in shambles right now. I think keeping a guy like Brian Hoyer to mentor Mac, him and Mac did well together last year. I think they had a good connection. I think Brian was always there when Mac had questions, and it's going to be interesting to see what the situation is this upcoming season. We still don't know who the offensive coordinator is going to be. We still don't know who the quarterback coach is going to be. I think that's a huge need right now and something the Patriots should be putting more focus on. But keeping a guy like Brian Hoyer is like keeping a quarterback's coach, keeping a guy who has so much knowledge of the system. Any question that Mac has, Brian Hoyer is going to be able to answer. And I think that's going to be huge for his development. For the cheap money that it's going to cost, if you can keep him here, absolutely no brainer for me. I would keep him here. And then couple more. We'll talk about some special teamers. Gunner, Nick Folk, and Matt Slater.
Gunner's restricted. That makes it a little easier. I think that he comes back. Nick Folk, I think that you got to keep him after the year he's coming off of. And Matt Slater, if he doesn't retire, that's a no-brainer. You make him retire a Patriot and let him be the leader of this team because is one of the best leaders in the Patriots organization outside of Tom Brady. So, or, Patriots history outside of Tom Brady. So I think all those guys, because they're going to be relatively cheap and they play important roles. We know how much special teams means for Bill. I think that those guys are pivotal. I think the one guy, if one of them isn't going to come back, other than Slater if he retires, but if you're just going to say one guy that's going to sign with another team, it's going to be Gunner, in my opinion.
And I honestly, Gunner's another guy that feels like a Patriot. He feels like he wants to be here, but I wouldn't mind Gunner being gone. It doesn't matter a ton to me if the cheap money it's going to cost is going to go elsewhere. If you need to pick between Brian Hoyer and Gunner, I'd pick Brian Hoyer to mentor Mac. I think it's more important. I think you can find a punt returner elsewhere, even though he's, a special teams option, which is important to the Patriots. He hasn't been anything. He hasn't contributed at all as a receiver, and he's not good enough consistently as a punt returner right now. He had a great year his couple years ago, the Cam Newton year, but this year he was fine. He wasn't horrible. He wasn't bad. He wasn't spectacular. He had a worse year than the year before previous. Nick Folk, you got to keep. I don't trust Quinn Nordine yet. We'll see what his development looks like. Hopefully he's great. That'd be awesome. Matt Slater, got to keep. Doesn't matter. I don't care if Matt Slater stinks. I really don't. His role on special teams and his leadership, he's the ultimate Patriot. You're not going to find a more Patriot-like player who represents what that organization means and wants to portray than a guy like Matt Slater. He's the goat of all goats for Patriots. He's such a good dude. So I'm fine with Gunner going. I'm fine with him staying either way. If the money works, Nick Folk and Matt Slater, I think you definitely got to keep.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So, do you want to get into, maybe some, not really a mock draft, but some draft? Brian's asking here, how do you feel about our chances of getting Chris Olave? Browns, Saints, Falcons possibly all need receivers. So maybe let's talk about possible, off of the signings and re-signings that we talked about and the trade that you made, maybe some options at 21 that you'd like to see New England take.
Yeah, Chris Olave, if he's there, I would love to take him. I think he's going to perform well at the combine. I think that's going to change the way that teams look at him just a little bit. I think it could improve his stock, is basically what I'm trying to say. Saints is a spot I could definitely see him going. They need a receiver badly. Browns are projected to get Garrett Wilson in a lot of mocks. The Eagles are projected to be looking for a receiver. I've also seen Falcons and the Jets take receiver in certain mocks. So there's a lot of teams that need receivers. We'll see if they end up taking him that high. I think Olave, I feel like he's probably going to go at 18 to the Saints or one of those 3 Eagles picks after this combine, if he has a good combine. I hope he falls to us. If he does, I would love to take Olave. The consensus mocks that I've seen right now have Olave falling right at that 21 spot, like in that range. So it's going to be close. I'd love to take him, but if Olave isn't there and they don't love a guy, I think they're going to trade it back. I really think they will. Yeah,
I think that it's very possible, especially if New England uses a ton of cap space this year. That, in your scenario, you gained a couple extra picks because you traded Isaiah Wynn. Maybe you can, trade Harry for a 7th, trade some guys for late round picks, but I think that it is very, very, very likely that New England trades for an early 2nd round pick now and then gains an extra 4th, maybe a 5th, and possibly a 7th. Like,
can I give you a scenario I found?
Yeah.
So this is just, the trade chart or whatever that they use for like points.
Oh, yep.
Like this pick's worth this many points. So I calculated this out for a team that has 2 2nd round picks this year, the Denver Broncos. They also have the 9th pick in the 1st round. Maybe at the 9th pick, they take a corner or whatever they end up wanting, edge rusher, whatever they feel is best for their team. And maybe they want to trade back up for a quarterback. Maybe one of their quarterbacks, oh, this guy's still here. Let's take him. Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, whatever. Maybe that's something they do. So the points work out. This is even a little in favor of the Broncos, the points wise, but you can trade our 1st round pick, number 21 overall, for Denver, pick 41 in the 2nd round, pick 64, so the last pick of the 2nd round, and pick 143, which is I think in the 5th round. 2 2nd round picks in a class that is stacked throughout the mid 2nd round. A lot of talent in that, and I had the Patriots taking a few different guys. I had them taking that trading back, and you can get 3 guys in the second round, that'd be great. That'd be really great. There's a lot of talent there. So that's a great option for trading back if that's what they end up wanting to do. But go ahead.
And well, there's multiple teams with 2 second round picks. The Jets have 2 second round picks.
Yeah. I just didn't think we'd trade with the Jets.
Yeah. Not the Dolphins. The Lions have 2. Well, they have 32 and then they have an early second. So maybe they want to get up and get a quarterback. I don't know. I think that you're going to see teams in 2020 when New England traded up or traded back from 23, they got pick 37 and pick 71. So they got a second and a third round pick, and they moved down 15 spots. So I think that maybe you see something similar to that. Maybe you get a little bit more value out of that and maybe add another late round pick. But I think that you're looking at the possibility of New England trading back and, getting some more picks, because I really do like a lot of the second round options, whether it's at receiver, cornerback is the one position I don't really like
in the second
round guys. There are some guys that I think could possibly make a name for themselves in the late rounds. Now I'm drawing a blank on them. Got to pull him up. Marcus Jones out of Houston. I've, liked some of his films. Kyler Gordon. I've seen him go late in first rounds, though. He's a really good slot corner. Possibly Roger McCreary falls, and his arm length is a concern for me, but maybe in the second round, it's something you take a chance on. Daxton Hill.
Kobe Bryant here from Boston Headline.
Kobe Bryant. Darion Kendrick from Georgia. Mario Goodrich from Clemson. Mikael Wright from Oregon, Josh Jobs from Alabama. Those are a couple guys which I don't know if I'm super high on them. Like, say, I would be a Chad Muma, a Christian Harris, a Darian Beavers.
But Job is a guy who could fall. Like, just his press man ability or whatever. Some teams maybe more zone coverage teams. Kind of a raw guy. If he falls, maybe the Patriots like him with their heavy man coverage system that they usually like to run. So there's some options that maybe those guys will be available, but. Yeah, there's not a ton in the second round. If you want to get a good corner, you probably want to look at the first round, and then second isn't the best. Maybe a couple of guys you talked about fall into the second, and that gives you some options there. But
yeah, and going off of Gabe Singh, would you rather have a premium receiver in the first or trade back and get a receiver in the third and receiver in the second? I think that you're looking, if this is Chris Olave on the board at 21, then I want the premium receiver. If it's not, then I am 100% fine trading back in an extra pick and taking a John Mechie, maybe a Christian Watson, one of those second or third round receivers. That would be my take on that.
I would agree. If it's Chris Olave, even if it's Jameson Williams, I'd be okay with us taking that at 21. The best receiver I'd want, like you just mentioned, Mechie in the late second, maybe even early third round. We'll see where it ends up going, but I would take that. It's tough. There's a lot of good receivers, but not all of them are good scheme fits for the Patriots. We talked about some slot guys, maybe in the second, third rounds, and then later in the draft. But a guy like Chris Olave, is slam dunk pick. If he's there in the first round, I'd rather take him than take a receiver in the second and third. I think there's so much value in the those second and third rounds. I had us in kind of this little mock offseason that we're doing. I had us trading back from that spot and getting Travis Jones, defensive tackle, Chad Muma, and John Mechie all in the second round with the 3 second round picks that we would have from that. Those are 3 great players. I think that can all contribute pretty early. Mechie obviously has the injury, and then after that, I had us taking Kobe Bryant cornerback in that third round. So Slade Bolden I took later in the draft as another wide receiver option from Bama, and then I'll get into the last one in a little bit when we talk about a couple trades. But
yeah, I don't disagree. I think that the trade back is something that Patriots fans joke about, but this is the one time I can legitimately
perfectly fine with it. Honestly,
I really am perfectly fine with it. I think that there's a lot of needs depending on what is addressed in free agency. I think there's a lot of needs that New England needs to fill, and there's a lot of talent I like in the second round that you could swoop up, and like you mentioned, you get a Travis Jones to play opposite of Christian Barmore, a Chad Muma come in that's a good athletic young physical linebacker, and then John Mechie, who we all know as Patriots fans that we love, and address Kobe Bryant in the second round or in the third round, and let him develop and see what he can become, because he has potential. He just it's kind of been in the shadow of Ahmad Gardner and is a little bit raw. He's not as developed as Ahmad Gardner. So
a lot of this stuff. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, and I don't know if this is what you're hinting at with your last pick, but there's also a way to save money. That's cutting Jake Bailey and drafting or trading, however you get rid of him, cut or trade, and drafting the punter out of San Diego State, Matt Ariza, I think is how you say his name. But people are tagging him as, one of the best punting prospects ever.
And that's what you got to save money, and that's a spot that you can do it. And Bailey didn't have a great year. He's going to need a contract soon. It saves like $3-4 million. That's not nothing. That's something right there. I mean, Odell Beckham, his projected contract is $5 million annually. You basically switch punters, and you could almost pay for Odell Beckham Jr. all by himself with that. So, I will say all this depends on the JC Jackson situation. You know what I mean? If JC Jackson gets traded, or if he walks and we don't get anything for him, you're probably going to have to look to get a corner round 1. You're going to have to look to get a corner early. Andrew Booth, if he falls, you might even have to reach for some other guy, Kaiir Elam or somebody else. So it's going to be big to see the situation. In my scenario, I had the Patriots retaining him, finding a way to retain him somehow. And that's where you get a corner later in the draft. You could even go Josh Jobe, guy like that. But if you retain JC Jackson, I think you still take a corner, maybe around 3, and that range would be good. And then you can take defensive tackle, linebacker, receiver. There's plenty of options in those first few rounds. And then late round guy, Slade Bolden, and a punter, Ariza, however you say it, projected to be one of the best punters coming out of college football ever. So I think that has Patriots written all over it. Maybe it's something that's too obvious and the Patriots don't end up doing it. That could very well be true, but certainly an intriguing option if you want to save some money and get a guy who could be a generational talent.
The other thing, and this isn't really a position we've talked about in the draft yet, but offensive line, offensive tackle, depending on what happens with Trent Brown, if Isaiah Wynn's moved, maybe that's a position that if you trade back and get multiple seconds or an extra third, you try to, maybe find some more stability there and develop a guy. So I think that's another possibility at the draft when you're looking at late round or second round guys that could fall. Bernhard Ryman. I've just flipped the first letters of his last and first name. Darian Kinnard from Kentucky. Trevor Penning, I don't think he falls, but if he's there, I think that might be a no-brainer. Abraham Lucas out of Washington State. Arizona State has a dude that we did in our mock draft, Kellen Deesh. Or no, I think me and Gabe did it in our mock draft, was Kellen Deesh. We drafted Max Mitchell, Nicholas Petit-Fier. So there's also some value there in the offensive tackle room, as much as New England fans don't want to hear it. It's, a possibility with the uncertainty and of the contracts that we have right now.
Yeah, and if you trade back, maybe a guy falls to that pick. Like if you trade back from that pick to like maybe the Bengals pick or whatever, or the Lions, if they trade up from 32, maybe if a guy like that falls to 32, you can pick him up there. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I'm okay with them trading back into the second, like we said, but there's also some premier talent in that first round that if somebody falls, which they very well might, if somebody wants to trade up for a quarterback, if people reach on some quarterbacks, maybe a guy with talent falls to you. So I would love to see Chris Olave, Andrew Booth, maybe even Jordan Davis. There's a lot of different guys that I like, but round 2 seems like the sweet spot in this draft where there's a lot of talent. So if you can trade back, acquire more assets in that second round and later in the draft, you could have some home run picks there.
For sure. Sorry. Gabe says the Jace Gabe mock is undefeated. No point making 2.0. I agree. When 1.0 is as good as it's going to be, and that's pretty much exactly how the NFL draft is going to play out, no need to make it 2.0. Just go watch that one. I wanted to comment on this one. I know we haven't really watched quarterbacks because it's not relevant for Patriots, but I don't think Ritter's the best quarterback or the first quarterback pick. I think Matt Corral did enough for his stock. Or Matt Corral, not participating in the Senior Bowl is what I meant to say, almost did more for his stock than participating, because I think you saw flaws in every single quarterback, and maybe Malik Willis was the best quarterback at the Senior Bowl because of his scrambling and ability to extend the play. But I think that Matt Corral, people are going to look at and be like, oh, maybe he's better than all these options, because it sounds like not a lot of people are high on this quarterback draft class. I heard one scout, I don't remember where it was. It was probably just an Instagram quote, said they take all 5 quarterbacks this year and Davis Mills before any quarterback in this draft. So, I don't think that this is a strong draft class. I don't know who the clear-cut one quarterback is, but I personally don't think it's Ridder. I think Ridder makes it in the first round because I think there's a lot of quarterback-needy teams. I just don't think he's the one that I would take a chance on, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't like to take a chance on many people in this draft class. A lot of them scare me, but there's a lot of quarterbacks from last year that would definitely go ahead of these guys if they were drafted this year. Davis Mills was quietly better than a lot of the quarterbacks this year as a rookie, and he had Brandon Cooks, I guess, but he kind of did it with a not so amazing team. I was impressed with Davis Mills. I thought he showed a lot, and it'll be interesting to see what he does this year if he gets the shot at the starting job of the whole year. But let's move back to more Patriots topics, less quarterbacks. But what draft pick do you realistically see us getting from J.C. Jackson, tagging and trading him?
Well, if we were to trade him for a pick, I would hope that it's a first-round pick.
I would hope. I don't know.
I don't think it's going to be like a top 20 pick.
The problem is they need to pay him after. If he was on a contract, it'd be different. But they need to pay him after, so we might not get a first, which sucks. Because
if you look at teams at the back half of the first round that maybe have that cap space, I think I've thrown this out there for. I'm maybe not throwing this out there, but Cincinnati, if they're in a win now situation, and yes, they need a ton of offensive line help, but we just saw their secondary is not very good either. And Eli Apple got torched, and he's most likely gone. They have about 50 million in cap space, or 40. I think it's 39 million or 49. I think anyways, they have more than enough to sign J.C. Jackson if they were to trade him. And I mean, if the Bengals really feel like J.C. Jackson is if he can propel them to that next level, I would hope that you could get a first round pick out of J.C. Jackson. It would just have to be probably in the later half of the first round.
I would hope so. I mean, also some Bengals players were tweeting at him after he said Patriots didn't want. JC said Patriots don't want me. They haven't talked to me yet, but whatever. So Bengals tried to recruit him a little bit there.
Like looking at some of the later halves, like I know that he's been rumored to sign with the Raiders. So
Cardinals
so 22 or 23, would they be willing to give up those picks for JC Jackson? I mean, they've been rumored to want to sign him for 18 million. So I don't know, maybe they don't want to give up that first round pick though, but I would look at teams below us that possibly need a cornerback, maybe Green Bay. I mean, I don't think that that's likely, but if they want to pair someone with Jair Alexander.
You imagine that duo, Jair Alexander and JC Jackson. Holy moly.
So
that's scary. But yeah, I would hope we can get a first for JC, but I don't know, with the contract situation, it's going to be tough. I would hate to see us only get a second for a guy that talented, but the situation is really unfortunate. It honestly is. It's not a great situation. Pay him a little more than he's worth, or tag and trade him, or let him walk for absolutely nothing. That's worst case scenario. But let's move on to another draft question here. Thoughts on Drake London?
Yeah, I'm higher on him than most Patriots fans because I don't believe in the big Pac-12 wide receiver. So
are you higher on him for the Patriots?
No.
NFL wide
just,
or Patriots
just
wide?
NFL wide.
Okay.
I think that he is such a good talent that I'd be excited for him to be on the Patriots, but I don't think he's a good scheme fit. I promise you, Cole. I think that if he tests, and I don't know, I haven't read anything if he's testing because of his ankle injury, but I think whether it's at Pro Day or at the Combine this week, I really do think he is a freakish athlete. And the crazy part about him is he might be a better basketball player than football player. He was so good at USC for basketball. And that's why I like him, is because he, as a basketball player, you have to have foot quickness. He has good foot quickness off the line of scrimmage. He can run. He uses his body well to make contested catches. I think he's a very good wide receiver. Now, I don't think that he's a Patriot scheme fit, but I think that he is a very good wide receiver. And personally, if he were to go to the Jets at pick 10 or something like I've seen mocked before, I would hate to see him in the same division as New England.
So we're going to draft him in round 1 at pick 21 to go play for the Celtics, is what you're saying?
We should. And then maybe we can trade for like Robert Williams. What he could probably be a pretty good D end, right?
I mean, he's got the length, oh boy, no, he's too injury prone to play D end. Anyways, Drake London scares the crap out of me, just because of his size and his potential with that size. I would not love to see him go to the Jets either, but I also think he just has N'Keal Harry vibes written all over him because just the size. I'm scarred for life from N'Keal Harry. Anytime in the next 5 years that there's a big wide receiver rumored to us, I'm going to cry. That's just how it's going to be. If we draft Drake London on draft night, I'm gonna have to leave the draft show. You're gonna have to do the rest of it by yourself. It's gonna be a bad night. So hopefully we don't draft Drake London. He's got his size and his jump ball ability is impressive, but it's just scary. We don't love that in this Patriot system. He'll probably go somewhere and thrive. I'm sure he will, but not here. I don't think this is a spot for him.
I need to bring up this template because this is a hot take right here. Okay. I said this on my Instagram. I think Treylon Burks is closer to N'Keal Harry than Drake London. Treylon Burks played so much in the slot at Arkansas. I think he only played 61 reps against press man coverage in 2021. Something around that number. I'd have to pull it up exactly. I looked at it. He is not experienced. And I don't think that Treylon Burks can play slot receiver in the NFL. So I think that, in my opinion, I'm more comfortable with a Drake London on the Patriots than I am a Treylon Burks because he's proven to me that he can defeat press man coverage. He has the foot quickness to do it. He has the size to be a typical X receiver. He can make contested catches. I mean, Treylon Burks' size and speed is incredible, but I would it's a hot take. I know it is, but I would feel more comfortable with Drake London in the Patriot system than I would Treylon Burks. And I don't know if many Patriots fans would agree with me. That's just my take on it. I haven't seen Treylon Burks defeat enough press man coverage to think that it's going to translate into the NFL or that he's all of a sudden going to be able to do it at a high level.
I don't think that's too far from my belief either. I don't know. That's tough. Drake London scares the crap out of me. Not that Treylon Burks doesn't a little bit, just because of what you talked about, but Drake London is a typical, not a necessarily extreme separator. He's just a big guy with crazy jump ball skills. That doesn't always translate in the NFL 100% of the time, especially in the Patriot system where you're not going to see Mac Jones throw Drake London 30 jump balls in the first few weeks. I don't see him just throwing the ball up for grabs like that. I get it. If you have a big receiver like that, it's tempting, but I could see Zach Wilson doing that. I could see him throwing Drake London the ball up all day and maybe throwing 10 interceptions and 10 touchdowns and having a 50-50 shot with it. But that's just not how the Patriots want to be. So I'm really not loving the Drake London fit with the Patriots. Not that I love Treylon Burks either necessarily, but I think Treylon Burks' size and speed is intriguing. And maybe if he gets an opportunity to play more outside or even in the slot, if he plays there, and maybe he can develop more and be a contributor in the Patriots offense. But I don't love either of them. I'd probably say I'd rather have Treylon Burks. I don't know. That's a tough pick for me as well. I don't think it's as hot of a take with my opinion as you might think it is, because I see where you're coming from on that at least.
Okay, I'm gonna pull up a picture here. I gotta find it.
All right, I'll touch on this real quick.
Yeah, go ahead and touch on it. I'm trying to pull this picture up.
I think Booth, Davis, Olave, if not trade down. I 100% agree. Booth, Davis, Olave. Maybe Devin Lloyd you could throw in there. I'd be okay with probably, but Booth, Davis, and Olave, any of those guys are there at 21. I'm perfectly fine with taking them. I think I know Jace, you feel that Davis you could trade down to the second round and get a guy similar to Davis, but I'm definitely higher on Davis than you are. I think his size and the ability to move at that size, and if he's one-on-one with a pass blocker, even though his only move is a bull rush, good luck stopping a guy that big and that strong with his bull rush. So him next to Christian Barmore and then him in the run game, I think that'd be a tremendous fit for the Patriots, and it'd be a great pick. So any of those three guys I would be so happy with. I also, if none of them are on the board, a trade down, I'm perfectly fine with. I would completely understand a trade down scenario. I still, on draft night, when we do the live show and the Patriots trade down, you're still going to see me be disappointed because I'm going to get my hopes up that they're going to take some guy that they're not going to take. So you're going to see me disappointed. But as of right now, I think I'll be perfectly fine if none of those guys are on the board. And Jameson Williams is gone. Maybe you could throw him in there too.
Yeah. All right. Here's the picture I was trying to find. This is Drake London against Stanford. Double coverage, almost Megatron-esque, where he was getting so much attention. And let's see, I'm going to have to pull up. He torched the University of Utah. This was right before he got hurt. His stats against the University of Utah blew my mind. He was 16 receptions, 162 yards, and a touchdown. Okay, well, that's pretty good. Well, a week after that against Notre Dame, he was 15 receptions for 171 yards and 11.4 yards per catch. Then a couple weeks after that, he was 9 for 131 with a touchdown. And then a week after that, he was 10 for 165. Like, I don't love him. I'm not going to say I love him because
You said love. You did just say love.
I misspoke. He's my fourth receiver. I think I like him more than New England fans do. And that's just, I see a lot of potential in him. And I don't think Burks or Harry. I'm leading up to saying N'Keal Harry. I don't think
it's because Drake London and N'Keal Harry are the same person.
I don't think Burks or London are anywhere close to N'Keal Harry. You're going to see more speed. You're going to see more athleticism out of them. Yeah. But if I had to guess, that's just my takeaway on the who's closer to the N'Keal Harry. If I were to guess off of what I've seen,
he's your fourth wide receiver, just on your big board, or Patriots fit wide receivers.
Just on my big board.
Where'd you rank him? Patriots fits.
So someone asked me this the other day, and
right
how I
Slade Bolden in the 6th round.
No, I would take Drake London over any second round receiver. Probably, I'd probably take him over
the Patriots over John Mechie too.
Okay, you're right. Not over John Mechie, but I'd take him over Sky Moore. I'd take him over Wan'Dale Robinson. If I had to go fit wise, he'd probably be 6th or 7th for Patriots fit wise. Because I mean, obviously, I think
that's
Garrett
not far
Wilson,
off from where I am.
But I think Olave and then Wilson, Garrett Wilson, and then Jameson Williams,
Mechie,
then Mechie or Dotson, Mechie or Jahan Dotson right there. Then then maybe So maybe I would have London or Burks kind of in the same category. And then after that,
like
Christian Watson, some of those other guys. So
I think Sky Moore's an underrated Patriots type guy, just his ability in the slot. He seems like a typical kind of Patriot slot receiver with what he can do. So I think Sky Moore is a name that we should keep our eye on too. Christian Watson is spiking up boards quite quickly after his performance at the Senior Bowl, and I think he's gonna probably test well, and we'll see where he ends up being. But good question here, putting you on the spot. If Booth, Davis, Olave, and Lloyd were available at 21, who would you pick? And
Olave.
Okay. Well, okay.
You want me to rank them? Olave, Lloyd, Booth, Davis. There you go. There's my 4.
Wow. Say it one more time.
Olave, Lloyd, Booth, Davis. Now, that's assuming J.C. Jackson comes back. If J.C. Jackson is let go and he's not tagged or anything, then I'd probably go Olave, Booth, Lloyd, Davis. But I'd probably put Lloyd above Booth if we get J.C. Jackson back, and then we can get a second round receiver, third round Kobe Bryant, Josh Jobe, and let him develop under Jalen Mills and Jackson.
If JC's back, if JC stays, Olave, Davis, Booth, Lloyd. For me. If he goes, Booth, Olave, Davis, Lloyd.
See, and that's where, and I know you said it, that's just where we differ. I think that
I'm higher on Jordan Davis than you are, and you're higher.
If we were to trade back in the late first round and Jordan Davis was still there, it's a no-brainer for me. But at 21, I think that you're going to be able to get a Travis. If you really want a defensive tackle, you're going to be able to get a Travis Jones, Perrion Winfrey, someone like that.
You think that you think he's going to be available late first round though? Like think okay, so
I don't, but in some mock drafts that I've seen or mock drafts that I've done, he has fallen that low, and I've traded back and gained an extra third and fifth round pick and still drafted Davis at like 28.
So who would you take, Derek Brown or Davis? And if they were in the same draft right now?
That's a tough question. I didn't do much on Derek Brown, but I don't.
So I say that because
I thought that was kind of a reach for Carolina when they picked him.
I think I like Davis better than him, and he went at like what 8th overall. Derek Brown to the Panthers.
I think he went like 5.
Really?
He went. He might have been closer to 8, but he was. Let's see, I have it right here. 7. He was 7. You're right.
Okay, 7th overall. So I mean, if a guy like that is going 7th overall, and maybe they reached, you can always argue that, but I think Davis is worthy of being a top 15 pick. I think the NFL is changing. I think if Derek Brown, if Davis was in the draft 10 years ago, I think he is a top 10 pick, top 5 pick.
Yeah. Well, you could see Jordan Davis come off the board top 10 if Atlanta or someone up there wants to take a pick, take one of those.
I wouldn't think it was horrible. I think he's going to make more of an impact than you think. And maybe this is, I mean, maybe 5 years from now, he's a free agent and he just got cut by his team and he's horrible and nobody wants to sign him. Maybe that's the case. And we'll come back to this and you can roast me, but I think it's, I don't know. I like him. I think he'd be a good fit for the Patriots. It reminds me of Vince Wilfork esque type of guy. Him next to Barmore is an exciting duo. The run game is a problem for us. If you can tell me that we're going to get Travis Jones in the 2nd round and we can get Chris Olave round 1 or whatever, I'll be okay with that. I'll be perfectly okay with that. But I do think Davis has more capabilities and is more capable to be dominant in the NFL than a guy like Travis Jones, maybe.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree. I think that he definitely he's going to make an impact in the NFL. Like his size, I think that my knock on him is what everyone else is knocking is is he going to be a true 3-down? Is he going to ever develop into a true 3-down defensive tackle? Or is his, weight and size going to chase him off the field on 3rd downs because he's not a very effective pass rusher, which I think there's schemes for that. But when you have those limitations, that's where I wouldn't want to draft him in the top 10.
Yeah,
I think that Derek Brown at least had more savviness and rush moves to him than Jordan Davis did coming out. But I agree with you. I don't think you've seen a better run stopping defensive tackle in the last 5-6 years.
Yeah. And also I don't know. Barmore had the same questions about him, but the opposite. Is he going to be a 3-down player? Can he stop the run? Was Barmore's thing. And we saw him play a pretty good amount for the Patriots. He didn't do great against the run. He did great in the passing game. He was if you have to choose to double Barmore or Davis, yikes. Good luck. Because you're not stopping. I don't think you're stopping a bull rush move by Davis one-on-one unless you're a very big, very strong offensive lineman. And I don't think you're stopping Christian Barmore one-on-one. So I think they could be a mismatch nightmare for defenses. And I would love to see it. Like I said, I'd still rather have Olave. I'd still rather have Booth. But Davis, I have above Lloyd. And you could argue, I could argue Davis over Andrew Booth in certain situations if we get JC Jackson back. But they're intriguing prospects. I'd say Olave is the clear-cut number 1 for me. Booth and Davis are right there, and Lloyd is half a step down from those guys of who I would pick. But I'd still be okay taking him at 21. But out of those 4, that's kind of my rankings, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, everyone has their own rankings. I don't think there's any right or wrong rankings until
eventually there's right and wrong.
Eventually there is, but right now
next year you're going to come back here and say, Cole, you were wrong. Jordan Davis shouldn't have been even a 6th-round pick. No.
Never.
Interesting question here. Would you bring back Chandler Jones?
Yeah, if it's for $1 million a year.
That's my thoughts. Exactly. He's going to be too much money.
He's going to be too much money. So I don't think it's out of the question. He'd be tremendous, but I don't think that he's even a possibility.
Yeah, I don't either. Do we want to touch on any of these trades that we were talking about? Let's create cap space, or do we want to just save that for the video?
We kind of is this the video coming out Thursday that we already recorded?
No, this is the video we're recording tonight.
Well,
we did.
Let's save it then.
Okay.
We'll give you guys a teaser. You guys have to come back.
All right, perfect. And then let's see. If we trade for Ridley and not give up our first, do you still take Olave? I think that'd be awesome, but no. I think if you trade for Ridley, I mean, if a guy like Andrew Booth is on the board, and JC Jackson leaves, I think you take Andrew Booth. But if you keep JC somehow and get Calvin Ridley, I think you trade that first round pick for more second round picks to fill the gap that you have. Maybe trade for an early second, and maybe you can get 2 seconds from that first round pick. If you can't, maybe a second, a third, fourth, whatever. So wide receiver, yes. Boston headline, we need a wide receiver one. I couldn't agree more. And the one encouraging thing, like we talked about on a podcast a few weeks ago, I think the Patriots have been involved. I think they recognize that they need a wide receiver. Nelson Aguilar's not the one. Kendrick Bourne was great, but they've always been involved. Odell said he was very close to signing with us during the season. Patriots were heavily involved in that. Justin Jefferson, they were rumored to want to draft him, but he got picked the pick before us. They're always involved in these free agent wide receivers. Julio Jones this year, trade targets. They're always involved. So I think they know the position needs help, but they just haven't been willing to pull the trigger. And eventually they're going to have to. And if they want this offense to take it to the next level and compete with the Buffaloes of the world, the Kansas Cities, even the Bengals, I guess you could say at this point a little bit, but there's a heavy need for a good wide receiver on this team. And I think it would help Mac's development tremendously, especially with this offensive coaching staff in shambles right now and a lot of question marks there.
Yep. This is really the last question I have, or I want to answer, unless there's more that come through. But is there any free agents that you realistically see us signing from different teams?
This is one that I like. He was PFF's second highest graded linebacker this year. This is a guy I know you like too. I saw you posted about him, Devondre Campbell. I think he's a guy at that linebacker position that can fill a need. He's 28 years old. And I think if you let Hightower walk and you let Bentley walk, this is a guy that can maybe fill in as your middle linebacker, and then you draft a guy, or Cameron McGrone is your linebacker number 2. So I think he's a guy that you can maybe see the Patriots being interested in. His projected contract is $9 million annually. A 2-year contract is what he's projected to sign. So I think that's one guy that we both like and feel like the Patriots could maybe be interested in.
Yeah, there's 2 guys for me kind of, and it's at the cornerback position. If JC Jackson's gone, I think you need to, maybe sign someone along with drafting someone so that you're not so young at that position. But Javarius Ward, cornerback for the Chiefs right now, he's going to be 26 years old. He's young. The other one I like is, maybe pluck in a division rival. And last time we signed a cornerback from Buffalo, it turned out really good. But I really like Levi Wallace too. I maybe don't think that he's maybe a true scheme fit. They run a little bit more zone, and he's better at zone in Buffalo. But I wouldn't mind seeing him come here. I think that he's a guy that could, if we go to more of a rotation, 3-4 corners, because we don't have that true lockdown one, I'd like to see Levi Wallace. And then maybe you want to sign, a veteran guy, Casey Hayward, Jason Verrett. There's guys out there. I just don't think that they're the long-term answers, which is, I think New England kind of needs to at least address and have a path. You can't keep delaying this at the cornerback position. So those would be a couple of the guys that I would look at the cornerback position if we're going to sign someone other than JC.
Yeah, and no love for Stephon Gilmore. That's all right. I feel like he'd thrive in the Patriots system. Gilmore seems like he'd be a good fit in the Patriots scheme, but no, I don't think there's any. I like Ward. I think he's a good, solid man coverage corner. I wouldn't mind that, and he's projected his contract 3 years, $10 million annually. That's not too bad. He's not a number 1 guy necessarily, but if you draft a guy, you get Ward, Andrew Booth, Jalen Mills, Jonathan Jones. That's all right. It's kind of scary sounding, to be honest. But and one other thing I wanted to point out: Carlton Davis is projected to get just over $17 million a year. J.C. Jackson, 18. So if Carlton Davis, not that he's not good, he's a number one corner. He's had some injury issues. I'd rather have J.C. Jackson over Davis. So if guys like that are getting that kind of money, I don't see why J.C. Jackson shouldn't. I guess it's still it's so much money these guys are getting. But maybe if you can lock them up on a long-term deal, you can make the money not as bad. So we'll see if J.C. Jackson takes something like that. What do you think about Matthew? He said he believed in Mac Jones when he was drafted.
I don't think I'd really. I think he's a great talent. I don't know if I'd want him in New England. He's, kind of past his prime too. And I think that we have enough good young safeties, Adrian Phillips, Kyle Duggar. Maybe you move Jalen Mills there. I think we have
a lot
enough
of money too.
Yeah, I think that we have enough safeties that he's a guy that I'd probably pass on.
I do think we're going to have to look for a safety in the near future, but I think for his age and his money, maybe not the guy that you're going to want. He is super talented. I mean, when he was out of that Chiefs game against Buffalo in the playoffs, you noticed he was out immediately because they were getting burnt in the back end. He's great, but $16 to $17 million per year annually for a 30-year-old safety when we currently have a lot of talent at that safety position, I don't think it's necessarily a top need. And also, he talks too much. I do agree with you. I do agree with you, Master Echo. Another good one here, and this is kind of I know we both love this guy, but money wise, we'll see if it could work. But what about Godwin if he looks for a move from Tampa?
Yeah,
there was also a report today that apparently they're working on a contract extension. I don't know if that's true, but a Bucks reporter posted that.
Everything makes sense to bring Godwin here. I think you talk about scheme fits, he's a scheme fit for sure. I mean, Brady loved him in Tampa. He works the middle of the field great. He's tough, great route runner. I think that he would be a no-brainer if you can work out the contracts.
Would you rather have Ridley or Godwin?
Godwin. Yeah. I think I would, but I think it's more realistic you get Ridley.
I agree. But Chris Godwin's would be a great fit here. Number one receiver, good scheme fit in the offense. He can do things from the inside, from the outside. Great route runner, solid after the catch. He's great. He's good in the red zone too. Pretty solid touchdown machine. I would absolutely love Chris Godwin here. That would be phenomenal, but not likely. He's probably going to re-sign with Tampa or demand big money somewhere. Maybe he's more in the Patriots range now with the ACL. Still don't think it's likely unless J.C. Jackson's gone. That's a guy you could fill a need on the offensive side of the ball and then address defense in free agency and the draft to try to fill up that giant hole at cornerback. But I would love Godwin. I just don't think it's realistic for the Patriots to actually go out there and sign a big number one receiver in free agency. It's just not something you see them do often.
Yeah, I think we said it before too. It's more likely they go out and draft a receiver in the first round than sign a big name free.
And that's sad because they've only ever drafted one receiver in the first round. So that's sad to say. That shows you how the Patriots feel about receivers. Unfortunately, elite ones. They feel like they can do it with anybody. And I mean, they have. It's easier to do it with anybody though. When you got Tom Brady, the greatest of all time, he can cover up for a lot of things. So I don't know. We need a receiver. That's clear. Everybody in Pat's Nation, I think, agrees with that. I know we both feel that same way. But Godwin, Ridley, Chris Olave, Jameson Williams, Mechie, any of these guys would be great fits in this Patriots offense, and I would absolutely love it.
For sure. Well, do you have anything else for our mock off season before we wrap it up? We've almost been going 2 hours now because we've had so many good questions.
Yeah, we have a lot of good questions. Thank you guys for all the engagement this episode. One other guy actually that I briefly touched on, Odell Beckham. He's going to be coming off an ACL as well. But he's projected $5 million annually. That's a guy that's been rumored to the Patriots multiple times. Coming off an ACL, maybe his value is going to be down. Maybe they finally land Odell Beckham, and that would be a little bit cheaper than a Calvin Ridley or a Chris Godwin, even though I think those two other players are way better players right now and better fits in this system. I think Odell still would be able to make a good impact. And the only concern I'd have is the wanting the ball force fed to him from Mac Jones. We've heard stories what happened in the Browns, but it's also the Browns of the Browns, and he thrived in Los Angeles. But Stafford clearly wanted to feed him the ball. But that's another option for free agent wide receiver who's a little bit cheaper than his normal value might be.
Yeah. 2 more questions since they just popped up. Juju, yes or no? No.
I can't do it. I just can't. We've seen them take guys that do stupid stuff off the field and are distractions, and we've seen them thrive here sometimes, and we've seen it not work out. I don't know. He's a fine receiver. I think his contract is like $7 million projected. Let's see. He's projected to get $8 million a year. He's projected to sign a 1-year deal for $8 million a year. I don't love it. I don't love it. It's better than nothing, but I don't love it.
Yeah, I'm a no on that. And then last one here, Jimmy G, where's he getting traded to if he gets traded?
I think that this is going to be interesting. Jimmy G did solid enough. He made some crappy throws and mistakes in the playoffs that they really could have probably gone to the Super Bowl if he performed a little better. We'll see where Trey Lance development is at, but Jimmy G, I think him going to the Bucs with those receivers, if they can fill in some of the holes, I know the Bucs aren't great on cap space and they have a million starters that are free agents this year, but if the Bucs can bring back those guys and they want to try to win now again, maybe Jimmy G's an option. Outside of that, not a ton. I mean, other teams that need quarterbacks, Pittsburgh, but I think the Bucs seems like the best fit for Jimmy G and for the Buccaneers out of the realistic options that they would have.
Personally, I don't think he gets traded unless San Francisco trades for Aaron Rodgers or something. I think that Trey Lance is a lot farther behind than people think. And I would say Indy would be one or Tampa Bay, like you mentioned. But I personally don't think – I think that Jimmy Garoppolo right now for the Niners, which this is saying a lot, is the best option to win. I don't think Trey Lance would have led them to where they are right now. I really don't. So I think he stays.
It's tough. It's tough because we don't know where Trey Lance is at. We know the talent he had, but you got to think that if they would rather have Jimmy G for his contract than Trey Lance on his rookie deal in his second season after a full year of development, you got to think that says something about Trey Lance and what he is as a prospect, how they feel about him. He's certainly got intriguing talent, but maybe he's further behind than people really realized, and maybe they took him too high at number 3 overall, but maybe they should have ended up with Mac Jones. Maybe that was the right pick for them, but no. I wouldn't be surprised. Mechie and Mac over Burrow and Chase, absolutely. And KB and Mac over Adams and Rodgers. Boston headline. There we go. I like that.
He knows. So, no, well, I think that's it. Master Echo, this was awesome. Thanks. We thank you guys all for the support.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been awesome. This is one of the best streams that we've had, and we're just going to keep doing it. Next week, we'll have a lot of stuff to talk about. Same time, Tuesday night, about 9 o'clock Eastern time. 9 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have all the combine stuff. Make sure you guys watch that. We'll be watching it. And look for our videos coming out Thursday and Sunday. Make sure to continue to show support on those. And then when the draft is here, we're planning on going live and live streaming the first round and, answering all you guys' questions live during the draft. But that's it for me.
Yeah. Hopefully on draft night, we can have a fun little draft show here, hang out with you guys, react all together about the picks, how we're feeling, what we think the Patriots should do, should they trade, who they should get. So I think draft night that's gonna be really fun. Light Shadows. I'm new to your channel. I've been watching your last few videos. Please keep the content going. It's a great show. Thank you, man. We really appreciate that. We appreciate all you guys who are new watching these videos and engaging with the content, commenting on the live streams. It really means a lot to us. And so we thank you guys for the recent support. It's been awesome. We're going to have a video, like Jay said, coming out on Thursday. We're going to have a video coming out on Sunday where we'll break down how the Patriots can create some cap space related to this video that we did today as well. But we got so many great questions that it ran a little long. So thank you guys. We will see you guys on Thursday, but thank you guys for the support tonight, all the engagement, and have a good night, guys.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Patriots Drive podcast. Follow us on social media to stay up to date with all things New England Patriots. Make sure you tune in to the next episode and check out patriotsdrive.com for more great content.
We're on to Cincinnati.